Hi, my name is Krim Marchese, and this is my presentation on exercising with an anxiety disorder. To begin, I wanted to first define anxiety disorders. So, you can define anxiety disorders as a group of mental illnesses, and the distress they cause you can keep you from carrying on with your normal life. Examples include generalized anxiety disorder, panic disorder, and social anxiety disorder. And my source for this was the American Psychological Association. I wanted to focus on generalized anxiety disorder because I do think it is the most broad. It also covers most of the signs and symptoms that relate to other anxiety disorders, and I also found that generalized anxiety disorder is most likely to be present along with other anxiety disorders. So instead of covering all of them, I want to focus on just one. So, and it's also extremely common. There are more than 3 million cases per year. So, some signs of GAD or generalized anxiety disorder would be overthinking / imagining worst possible outcomes. It would also be perceiving situations as threats when they aren't. Um, it also includes handling uncertainty with difficulty and decisiveness. Some physical symptoms of generalized anxiety disorder include fatigue, trouble sleeping, nervousness, sweating, diarrhea, irritable bowel syndrome, and nausea. And my source for this was Mayo Clinic. Just some pathophysiology. This is basically explaining why people have anxiety disorders, what's basically going on in the brain. So, anxiety disorders can be described as a disruption of control in the central nervous system as well as a chemical imbalance in the brain. The chemical imbalance is said to be caused by a lack of neurotransmitters, and physical symptoms of anxiety disorders include, but they are certainly not limited to, an overwhelming sense of fear, sweating, restlessness, lack of sleep, and increased heart rate. And my source for this was the National Institute of Mental Health. And just a brief epidemiology would be genetics, differences in brain function and chemistry, differences in the way threats are perceived, and personality and development. And just going back to the slide before this, the pathophysiology, this is explained by chemical imbalances. Just if someone isn't like neurotypical, this means that they could be lacking in certain neurotransmitters, and their brain could be upregulating their sympathetic nervous system, which is basically causing those physical symptoms of anxiety, such as nervousness, sweating, a fast heart rate. Those are all things that happen during fight or flight syndrome when it comes to the sympathetic upregulation of the autonomic nervous system. So, of course, this would be because of a lack of chemicals or neurotransmitters in the brain. And just for medication use, obviously you could take antidepressants. That would be doing the same thing with regulating the hormones, neurotransmitters, and chemicals in your brain. So these are also called SSRIs, or selective serotonin reuptake inhibitors. And then another kind of medication is SNRIs. This is serotonin and norepinephrine reuptake inhibitors. And we know that norepinephrine is a huge hormone when it comes to the sympathetic nervous system. So it would make sense that you would need to take one of these for an anxiety disorder. There's also antihistamines and beta blockers. Beta blockers are typically used in lowering blood pressure, but I know they do just about the same thing in relaxing. My dad actually takes a beta blocker for his anxiety. And I know it works really well for him. And just a little note that SSRIs and SNRIs are taken daily, while antihistamines and beta blockers are used only when needed. So basically, like if you're having an attack or anything like that, then you would take an antihistamine or a beta blocker as needed and not every day. So just some risk stratification, just something to be aware for with exercising when you are taking medications like that. Some medications for depression and anxiety can cause drowsiness or fatigue. That's basically to balance out your brain always being upregulated. You're going to have to, if your brain's up here, then you're going to want to bring it into the middle here. So that sometimes side effects can be drowsiness or fatigue. And this can affect exercise. If anything, exercise could counteract this side effect and make you less drowsy during the day. And just a note, if you have been inactive before starting to exercise, you can break up the exercise sessions into shorter ones, say like 10 to 15 minutes, and then once you really get into the pace of having like an exercise routine, you can definitely work your way up to longer sessions, like 30 to 40 minutes, which is pretty typical. My source for this is Exercise is Medicine. And just some incorporation of research, I did find this study that was conducted in the Netherlands. It just looked at different mental disorders. So we have like depression, anxious depression, anxiety, and social problems. But I was mostly interested in looking at the anxiety portion of the research. So if you look here, you can see that for exercising males and exercising females, there is a decrease in anxiety compared to those who didn't exercise. I think this is very important because with anxiety, mostly I feel like people want to take medication and just not worry about it. But in this case, when you have research like this, you can see that exercise actually significantly helps symptoms and complications with anxiety, along with other mental disorders too, which this study shows. And for my case study, I have 30-year-old Jessica who complains of having difficulty concentrating, being easily fatigued, lacking in sleep, muscle tension, and irritability. She constantly worries about money, her family, and relationships. She sees her psychiatrist who diagnoses her with generalized anxiety disorder. Her psychiatrist suggests, along with cognitive behavioral therapy, she should take up an exercise program. And this is what I came up with for Jessica. So for exercise prescription, I've split it up into aerobic exercise and resistance training. For aerobic exercise, for frequency, I said 3 to 4 days a week to begin and eventually working up to 5 days a week. Somebody with an anxiety disorder, I think, would really benefit from having higher than normal rates of exercising just from like the average person, because exercise can release endorphins and basically combat symptoms that they might be having because of their anxiety. For intensity, I said moderate to vigorous exercise is recommended. This is just because you can still get the same benefits from either types of intensity. Moderate would probably be more like a run or fast, or not a run. That would be vigorous. Vigorous would be more of a run, jog, and moderate would be more of walking or a fast-paced walk. And then time, 30 to 60 minutes a day. And as I said previously, the time can be broken up to 10-minute sessions a day just in case this person is a beginner. And for type, I said that it's probably best to choose an exercise that you would find to be enjoyable. Some people like cycling, some people like swimming, some people like running. I think choosing something that you would enjoy would make you more likely to keep doing it. And in case in anxiety, that's going to be like a long term, something you're probably always going to have to deal with. Sticking to an exercise plan is in your best interest. As for resistance training, this will also release those good chemicals too. So frequency, I said 2 to 3 days a week. Intensity moderate, because you don't need to be like a bodybuilder or anything to get the same effects. And time, just however long it would take to do 3 sets of 10 for each muscle group. And type, I said free weights and strength machines. I think those are probably like the best for beginners. Yeah, and these are my sources, and thank you for watching.